I was just the nanny, tucked away with the alpha's pups while the entire pack prepared for the mating ceremony. Little did I know, the alpha king himself had abandoned the ceremony, his eyes fixed on me for reasons I couldn't comprehend, until he did the unthinkable. Chapter 1. The Invisible Nanny. The scent of warm milk and clean linen was Kelly's entire world. Here, in the royal nursery, she was safe. She was invisible. She hummed softly, rocking little Lyra, the alpha's pup with silver hair and stormy eyes. The familiar ache settled in her chest, a yearning for something she could never have. A family, a mate, a place to belong. From beyond the door, sounds of the pack preparing for the grand ceremony bled through. Tonight, Alpha King Kalen would begin his search for a Luna. The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine. Lady Ara appeared in the doorway, a vision in winter blue, her silver hair coiled in diamonds. Her gaze swept over Kelly with that familiar look of distaste. Tainted. The look that whispered of her parents' disgrace, a sin Kelly was forced to wear like a shroud. Kelly retreated into her tasks. She remembered another man, a beta she'd thought she loved. No alpha will ever choose the daughter of traitors. You are replaceable, Kelly. Always will be. A sharp cry shattered the quiet. Leo was awake, his cries growing desperate. Kelly scooped him up and did the only thing she knew. She began to sing, an old lullaby her mother had sung to her, a melody of moonlight and forgotten magic. His cries softened into silence. Lost in the moment, Kelly was unaware that her song was drifting through the stone corridors, seeking out a restless soul it was never meant to find. Chapter 2. A Presence in the Dark. The silence felt different now, heavier, as if holding its breath. Kelly could still hear the distant celebration, a reminder of the world she watched from shadows. 2 maids passed the nursery door. Lady Era looks like a queen already. The Alpha King would be a fool not to claim her tonight. The words struck Kelly like stones. Flawless bloodline. Her own felt like a disease. A sudden shift in the atmosphere made her freeze. The distant noise dropped away. The air grew thick with unseen pressure. The pups stirred, sensing something primal. Someone was coming. The nursery door creaked open slowly. A massive figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, blocking the light. He was huge, his shoulders filling the entire frame. An overwhelming power rolled off him in waves. Then she heard it, a low, rumbling growl. He moved into the lamplight. The Alpha King. He was larger than she'd imagined, a creature of raw, untamed power. His black tunic was unlaced at the throat, dark hair disheveled. He didn't look like a king at a ceremony. He looked like a predator on the hunt. His eyes held a strange, mesmerizing light, like glowing cinders of a dying fire. And they were fixed on her. Kelly dropped into a deep curtsy, her head bowed. Don't see me. Please, just go away. An eternity passed. He just watched her. She could feel his gaze, a physical weight pressing down. Kelly. His voice filled the room, a low, guttural rumble. It wasn't the voice of a king addressing a servant. It was possessive. A claim. She looked up, unable to stop herself. His eyes blazed with an emotion she couldn't comprehend. Desperation. Hunger. He took steps forward. She scrambled backward until her back hit Lyra's crib. Trapped. He reached out and wrapped his fingers around her wrist. His grip was iron, yet a shocking bolt of heat shot from his skin to hers. It wasn't painful. It was awakening. He held her there, his thumb stroking her wrist, his burning eyes searching her face as if memorizing every detail. Then, without a word, he turned, pulling her effortlessly to her feet and tugging her toward the door. As they reached the doorway, he paused. A growl ripped from his chest. A single, definitive word that sealed her fate forever. Mine. Chapter 3. The King's Declaration. The word echoed. Mine. then the world became a blur. Kaylin's grip on her wrist was iron, and he was dragging her from the nursery into the heart of the storm. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate. Hers were frantic, stumbling. They burst through the towering doors of the great hall. A wave of sound, music, laughter, died instantly. 1,000 conversations choked into silence. 1,000 pairs of eyes fixated on them. The room was a galaxy of glittering lights and silks. Every face was turned toward the spectacle of their alpha king, holding the wrist of a terrified, plain-faced nanny. Kelly wanted to shrink under the weight of their collective gaze. Their judgment was a physical blow. Their scorn, 1,000 needles piercing her skin. Kaylin didn't slow. He pulled her through the parted crowd until they reached the raised dais at the front, where 2 ornate thrones sat empty. He stopped beside the Alpha's throne and turned to face the silent pack. He raised their joined hands high for all to see. A gasp rippled through the hall. "Tonight, you expected me to choose a Luna." His voice was a raw roar. "You expected a choice of politics, of bloodline, of convenience." He paused. "My wolf has made its choice. My heart and my very soul have chosen." He looked back at the pack, his voice dropping to a deadly growl. "This woman is my mate." The crowd erupted in venomous whispers. "The nanny! Her parents were traitors. This is an insult." Lord Valerius, head of the Elder Council, stepped forward, his face a mask of cold fury. "Alpha King, you cannot be serious. The law is clear. The Luna must be of noble bloodline, not someone who weakens it with a legacy of shame." Kaylin remained perfectly still. When he finally moved, his glowing gaze pinned the Elder in place. A low snarl vibrated in his chest. "The law serves the pack," Kaylin growled dangerously soft. "And my mate will strengthen this pack because she is mine. Challenge my choice, Valerius, and you challenge me." Lady Era glided forward. "Kaylin, after all these years, after everything, you would disgrace your throne with her?" Kaylin didn't even grant her a glance. He turned his back on the council, on Ara, on the entire assembly. He chose her over his kingdom. With his hand still locked around her wrist, he pulled her from the dais, dragging her away from the public execution of her old life. Chapter 4. The Prisoner. The heavy oak door slammed shut with dreadful finality. They were alone. He finally released her wrist, the skin red and tingling. He didn't look at her. Instead, he began to pace, a restless, contained violence that made the vast space feel suffocating. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that? It has to be a mistake." Kaylin stopped and slowly turned. The raw fury was gone, replaced by something more unsettling, desperate, agonizing pain. "It is no mistake," he said, voice rough. "For 5 years, since the northern skirmish, my world has been gray, muted. My wolf senses were damaged. I can barely sense my own pack. Food tastes like ash." He took a step closer. "But you, when you sang, it was like the sun breaking through clouds for the first time. Your scent, jasmine and moonlight and home. You are the only thing in this world that feels real to me." She was his cure, his anchor in a world that had faded to nothing. He backed her against a massive desk. "You feel it too, don't you? This pull, this certainty. It's the mating bond. It has chosen you." The primal part of her recognized the truth. There was a pull, a terrifying connection. But her mind screamed for escape, rejection. It was her only way out. As if he'd heard her silent plea, his body went rigid. Lethal coldness entered his eyes. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. His next words were not a request. They were a vow. "Reject me," he whispered, "and I will burn this world to ash." Chapter 5. The Gilded Cage. Morning arrived with cold, impersonal light. Kelly woke, gasping, drowning in silk sheets. This wasn't her room. This was a cage, gilded and beautiful, but a cage nonetheless. Kaylin's threat echoed. Reject me, and I will burn this world to ash. She had to survive. Learn the rules of this terrifying new reality. 2 servants entered with armfuls of gowns and jewel tones. The maids worked in silence, eyes refusing to meet hers. A new kind of invisibility. Now she was avoided because she was a scandal. She had to see the pups. With resolve, she walked to the door. Forgive me, my lady. A royal guard stopped her. The Alpha King has given explicit orders. You are to remain in these chambers for your own safety. Her last connection to her old life was now forbidden. Let me pass. Lady Ara appeared, dismissing the guard with a flick of her wrist. Ara glided into Kelly's chamber, eyes glittering with predatory light. Enjoying the silks, little nanny? Don't get too comfortable. He tires of his new toys rather quickly. She circled Kelly, like a wolf assessing prey. He'll discard you, just like he discarded me. Ara paused at the door. An alpha's desperation is not the same as his devotion. Remember that. The door clicked shut, leaving Kelly alone with the chilling echo. Chapter 6. A secret revealed days blurred into monotonous cycles. Kelly existed in quiet despair, a ghost haunting her opulent prison. Kaylin was a phantom, a distant storm she could feel raging through the castle, but one who never came near. Then one evening he appeared. Come with me. He led her through quiet corridors, away from grand spaces. He was leading her back to the only place that had felt like home, the nursery. The guards were gone. He pushed the door open. There, sleeping peacefully, were Lyra and Leo. This was not a command. It was an offering. Relief washed over her. She moved past him, going immediately to the cribs, smoothing Lyra's hair, adjusting Leo's blanket. She felt Kaylin's presence behind her. They are not just the Alpha's pups, he said quietly. They are my brother's children, my brother Liam and his mate Anya. They were murdered 6 months ago. The confession hung heavy. A hidden murder, not a rogue attack as claimed. This secret could tear the kingdom apart. He was entrusting her with his greatest weakness, his most profound pain. Hesitantly, she placed a hand on his forearm. Kaylin, your secret is safe with me. In that quiet vow, everything changed. She was now a keeper of his secrets, a guardian of his heart. Chapter 7. The Growing Storm. A fragile truce settled between them. In the evenings, Kaylin would retrieve her, and they would sit in the nursery together, watching the pups sleep. Sometimes they would share a silent vigil by the fire. In those quiet hours, she began to see past the crown and the beast. She saw exhaustion carved around his eyes, the gentle way his hand would stroke Leo's cheek, the grief that shadowed his face. A dangerous warmth began to smolder in her chest. But this intimacy was shadowed by rising political strife. Kaylin was under constant assault from the Elder Council. She would hear his anger through thick doors. They were using her, her tainted blood, to undermine his authority. Kaylin's protectiveness intensified, becoming smothering. He forbade her from leaving the royal wing. The more he shut her out, the more their fragile trust began to fray. The tension snapped one evening. He stormed into his chambers after a vicious meeting, silent fury rolling off him in waves. Seeing his distress, Kelly prepared chamomile tea and brought it to him. Kaylin, she said softly. He stopped, turning to face her. The rage dissolved, replaced by raw, aching loneliness. He reached out, his hand closing over hers on the cup, fingers intertwining. Kelly, he breathed, voice thick with desperate longing. The air grew heavy, crackling with unspoken need. He gently took the cup, setting it aside. He drew her closer until only inches separated them. He leaned in, his scent overwhelming her, his lips parting slightly. Just as his lips were about to touch hers, he flinched back as if burned. Self-loathing twisted his features. He released her hand, turning his back. "Get out!" he rasped, his voice broken. The rejection was more painful than any insult. The intimacy had been real, but the wall he kept between them was more powerful. Chapter 8. The Spark of Defiance. Weeks of suffocating tension followed. Finally, Kelly found courage. She stood before him and told him she was going to the castle gardens. After a long battle of wills, he conceded with a curt nod, on condition his guards surround her. The gardens were not the sanctuary she hoped for. Lord Marius, one of Valerius's allies, was there. He didn't address Kelly directly, but let his voice carry, "It is a pity, is it not, that the pups of a true alpha like Liam are now being raised by that." The insult was cruel, aimed at her love for the children. But something different happened this time. Instead of withering, a spark of defiance ignited within her. She stopped, turning to face him fully. Her voice was calm and clear. "You are mistaken, my lord. The only pity here is that a noble title is wasted on a man who possesses neither the honor to respect his king's choice, nor the basic decency to respect the memory of a fallen alpha and his mate." She stepped closer. "Perhaps you have forgotten who their father was. I have not." Marius's sneer faltered, replaced by shock. Before he could respond, Callan moved. He grabbed the front of Marius's tunic, lifting him from the ground. "You will not speak of my mate. You will not speak of my kin." He slammed Marius against a stone archway. "If you ever do so again, I will tear the tongue from your worthless throat." Later that night, as Kelly walked back to her chambers, a black-fledged arrow suddenly thudded into the stone wall inches from her head. They were no longer trying to shame her. They were trying to kill her. Chapter 9. The Broken Bond. The castle became a fortress. Guards patrolled every corridor. Kelly was more of a prisoner than ever. The tension finally snapped in Kalen's chambers. "This is your fault," she cried out. "This cage you keep me in does nothing. It only paints a bigger target on my back." His control shattered. "I am trying to keep you alive," he roared, sweeping objects crashing to the floor. "I am trying to hold on to the one thing in this gray world that matters." In the heart of this inferno, he let the truth slip. "How am I supposed to protect you when the bond won't even ignite properly?" He trembled with the force of his confession. "It isn't whole. It feels broken." A true mating bond was a roaring conduit of shared strength. But theirs was just a flicker, because his wolf was too damaged from whatever happened in the north. He could sense her, feel the pull, but the final connection remained unlit. The words struck Kelly like a physical blow. Ara's whisper echoed, "An alpha's desperation is not the same as his devotion." It was true. He hadn't chosen her. He'd grabbed for a cure that was failing. With tears streaming, she walked toward him. She would end it. This was the only mercy she could offer. She began, but as she opened her mouth to speak the rejection, she saw it. Beneath the rage, beneath the desperation, sheer, unadulterated terror. The great Alpha King was terrified of losing her. She couldn't say it, but the unspoken rejection hung between them, a poison threatening to consume them both. Chapter 10. The Silver Light. The silence that followed was suffocating. The rejection she hadn't spoken was louder than any shout. Kalen stared at her, terror in his eyes slowly consumed by agony. He clutched his head, his body starting to tremble. A sickening crack echoed as his bones began to shift. This wasn't a controlled shift. It was violent, agonizing. He was trapped between man and wolf, his eyes glowing with mindless golden fury. The half-shifted monstrosity lunged. In that heart-stopping second, something within Kelly shifted. Fear was eclipsed by strange, sudden calm. An instinct she never knew she possessed took over. She didn't scream. She didn't cower. As the beast descended, she reached out. Her hand pressed flat against the center of his chest. A soft, silvery white light, cool and gentle as a moonbeam, flared from her palm. The ethereal glow sank into his body, a silent, soothing wave that met the raging inferno within. The creature's snarl faltered. The violent spasms ceased, the golden fury dimmed, revealing the shocked human gaze of Kaelin beneath. The raging storm inside him was silent. For the first time in years, his wolf was utterly at peace. He stumbled backward, stunned. He stared at her hand, then at his chest. Where had that light come from? What had she done? A sharp knock shattered the moment. A guard burst in. "My king, we've captured one of the assassins." Kaelin tore his gaze from Kelly and strode out, but Kelly saw a figure lingering in the shadows. Lady Era. Her face was cold, calculating realization. She'd seen the flash of silvery light. She knew the little nanny was something more. And the look in Ara's eyes was a new, dangerous vow. She would find out what Kelly was, and she would destroy her for it. Chapter 11. The Poisoned Chalice. In the following week, Kelly made a choice. Hiding was no longer an option. She found Kaelin preparing for a council meeting. "I'm coming," she said. This was not the act of a frightened servant. This was a choice, a deliberate step into the fire. As they walked the corridor, shock rippled through the castle staff. They moved as a united front. When they entered the council chamber, conversation ceased. Lord Valerius and the elders hardened into masks of cold fury. Kaelin strode to his throne and nodded to the empty space at his right hand, the seat reserved for the Luna. With a steadying breath, Kelly walked across the stone floor. She reached the spot beside the king and stood, meeting Valerius's glare without flinching. "I am here. I am his mate, and I am not afraid of you." After the meeting, as elders filed out, Kelly overheard Valerius's whisper. "She grows too bold. She must be dealt with before the coronation." Her gambit had succeeded. They now saw her as a threat that had to be eliminated. Days later, Kelly found an ally, Lena, a young serving girl with gentle warmth. Lena brought Kelly meals and shared harmless gossip. One evening, Lena brought a goblet of dark-spiced wine. "A gift, my lady, to help with the nerves." Kelly accepted gratefully. At first, pleasant warmth spread through her limbs, but the warmth gave way to creeping numbness. Her thoughts grew slow and sticky. When she tried to stand, her legs buckled. Cold dread washed over her. Something was terribly wrong. She stumbled toward the door as the world went black. Kaelin found her. The sound that ripped from his chest was not human. A roar of pure grief and rage that shook the castle foundations. As darkness threatened to pull her under, Kelly saw the monster he'd become in his grief. With the last of her strength, she reached out, clutching his face. "Kaelin," she whispered, "I'm not afraid of you." Her words pierced the red haze of his fury. With a sob torn from his soul, he scooped her into his arms and roared for the healer. Chapter 12. The Luna Trials. She survived. The betrayal burned away her last vestiges of fear, replacing them with cold, hard resolve. Lena had vanished, a clear confession of guilt. Kaelin made a desperate gamble. He invoked the Luna Trials, ancient, perilous rites designed to prove a mate's worthiness. The first trial took place at dawn in the sacred grove. Kelly had to walk a winding path to retrieve a moonstone while braving magical illusions designed to manifest her deepest fears. Lord Valerius and the elders officiated. Era watched with a predatory smile, certain the little nanny would break. As Kelly stepped onto the path, the world shimmered. Whispers of past rejections and scornful faces swirled around her. She pushed through, focused on the glint of moonstone ahead. Just as she neared her goal, black-clad assassins swarmed into the grove. This was the council's final gambit, to murder her during the trial and claim the sacred magic had rejected her. Chaos erupted. In the melee, one assassin broke free, his eyes landing on an easier target. In a pavilion, Lyra and Leo lay in their bassinet. Kelly saw him. Without hesitation, she abandoned the trial and launched herself forward. She threw her body in front of the bassinet as the assassin's dagger plunged downward. Searing pain exploded in her shoulder. But the pups were safe. Kaelin witnessed it all. She had proven her worth not with magic, but with love so fierce it defied death. As he charged the assassin, Era stepped into the grove's center, her voice ringing with triumphant malice. She bleeds with courage, I'll grant you. But it is the courage of a traitor's whelp, she screamed. Her blood is poison. She is the daughter of Maris and Lorien, the very wolves who betrayed the last king and tried to sell this pack to our enemies. Her moment of greatest heroism was eclipsed by the public revelation of her deepest shame. Chapter 13. The Condemned. The echo of Ara's accusation hung in stunned silence. Daughter of Maris and Lorien. The words were a death sentence. The pack members who'd seen her bleed for their future alphas now stared with sickening horror. Brief respect was extinguished, replaced by familiar suspicion and hatred. Lord Valerius seized the moment, pointing an accusatory finger at Kelly. It all makes sense now. This is not the king's fated mate. This is a viper we welcomed into our midst. He twisted events into sinister narrative, the king's obsession, the attacks on her life stage to make her seem a victim. It is all a lie, a plot to finish the treason her parents began. This was her absolute rock bottom. Wounded, exposed, and now framed as a conspirator. She stands accused of high treason, Valerius boomed. By ancient laws, there is only one punishment. She must be executed. The demand for her death rippled through onlookers, becoming a chant. Kaelin scooped her into his arms, radiating furious defiance. He carried her from the grove, not as a conquering hero with his Luna, but as a cornered king retreating with his accused mate. Chapter 14. The Impossible Choice. Kelly's shoulder was bandaged. The physical wound was proof of her loyalty, yet it meant nothing. In the pack's eyes, the scar was merely another mark of deceit. Kaelin stayed with her, but he was no longer a king radiating power. He was a tormented man, pacing like a caged lion, his helplessness more terrifying than his rage. A messenger arrived with news that sealed their fate. Lord Valerius had rallied the noble houses. Their ultimatum: deliver the traitor's daughter for execution, or they would secede, shattering the kingdom and plunging the pack into civil war. Kaelin was being crushed between two impossible loves, his duty to his people and the primal command to protect his mate. Seeing him so broken awakened the ghost inside her, the belief that she was a burden, a curse. Her life wasn't worth the blood of the kingdom. With tears streaming, she went to him, her hands finding his. Let me go, Kaelin. Give me to them. Don't let the pack bleed for me. My life isn't worth it. It was the ultimate expression of her brokenness, a desperate attempt to prove the terrible lie she'd always believed about herself. He stared at her, his golden eyes a maelstrom of conflict. Every instinct screamed at him to protect her, but the weight of the crown demanded sacrifice. As they stood locked in terrible stalemate, Era appeared in the doorway. "Oh, you poor naive thing," she whispered. "Don't you see how this ends? He is an alpha. In the end, a true alpha always protects the pack. He will always choose the kingdom." She let the words sink in before gliding away. Kaelin's tortured silence felt like confirmation. Era was right. Chapter 15. The Blood Oath, the great hall was repurposed for judgment. Kelly stood on a raised platform, facing the council and assembled masses. She felt hollow calm. Her death would be her final act of love, the only way to mend the world. Lord Valerius listed the charges, painting her not as their innocent daughter, but as patient, vengeful legacy. The pack, desperate for a scapegoat, drank it in. Just as Valerius raised his hand to pronounce the verdict, the great doors swung open. Kaelin entered. But he wore no crown, no royal finery, just simple black leather. He walked through the parted crowd until he reached the platform. He faced the council, his gaze devoid of rage, filled only with profound sorrow. You demand a price for the sins of the past. You believe she is that price. You are wrong. He drew the ceremonial dagger and laid it on the platform. Then he twisted the Alpha King's signet ring from his finger, the symbol of his power. I am the price, he declared. I will renounce my throne. I will abdicate and surrender my power to this council. He looked at Valerius. I will give you my crown, my kingdom, my entire life in exchange for hers. The world stopped. He was choosing her, not just over his life, but over his sacred duty, his legacy, his very soul. Kelly couldn't let him do this. She opened her mouth to refuse, to sacrifice herself. At that moment, a single beam of white light lanced through a high window. The full moon was rising. A guttural sound of torment started in Kaelin's chest, growing into a roar of heart-shattering agony as his body began to tremble violently. The strain of offering his soul finally broke his fragile hold on his tormented wolf. Chapter 16. Blood of the Moon. Kaelin's roar was the sound of a soul tearing apart. He was breaking under the impossible weight of his sacrifice. In that instant, watching him come undone for her, something inside Kelly shifted. The desperate wish to die was burned away, replaced by a ferocious need to live for him, to fight for him. The moonlight streaming through the window didn't feel cold. It felt like a jolt of life, warmth spreading through her veins like liquid starlight. Whispers about her parents echoed differently now. What if the story was a lie? What if her blood wasn't poison, but a legacy of something else entirely? As Kaelin's body began to contort, she moved. She was no longer a victim awaiting judgment. She was a woman walking toward her destiny. She placed both hands flat against his chest. This time, it wasn't a flicker. It was a flood. Brilliant, blinding silver-white light erupted from her palms, pouring into his body. The light was cool, calming, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine and ancient sacred places. The entire hall gasped. The moonlight seemed to bend, channeling directly through her. With the surge came ancestral knowledge, images and feelings not her own. She understood. She was not the descendant of traitors. Her bloodline was rare, ancient, and sacred. Moon healers, wolves with the ability to soothe the savage beast, to mend the spirit, to channel the goddess's essence. Her parents hadn't been traitors. They'd been a threat to dark power and were eliminated, their legacy twisted into a curse. Her touch did more than halt his transformation. The silver light sank deeper, finding the old wound on his soul from the northern skirmish, and began to soothe the scarred tissue. The tormented rage in his eyes cleared, replaced by blazing hope as he stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Across the hall, Lord Valerius and the elders stared in horror. The weapon they'd wielded, her tainted blood, had been obliterated by divine power. In the stunned silence, a new, terrifying question formed. What have we done? Chapter 17. The New Order. Kaelin, his wolf steady and calm for the first time in 5 years, seized the advantage. He took Kelly's hand, no longer a brand of ownership, but profound partnership. He led her from the platform, daring anyone to challenge them. The council was too shocked, too afraid to speak. back in the chambers, the world had been remade. He looked at her with humble awe. She told him everything she'd seen. My parents weren't traitors, Kaelin. They were healers. Someone in the old king's court feared their power, so they were framed, destroyed. Together they looked at the pieces. The council's desperate campaign against her, Valerius's obsession with her tainted blood. It was all built on lies. Kaelin spoke of a legend, a dangerous, forgotten ritual, the blood oath, a bonding ceremony under the full moon before the entire pack. We offer our blood, our spirits, our souls to each other and the goddess. If it succeeds, our bond will be absolute. Your power will be sealed as a divine gift. He paused. But if it fails, it could shatter us both. We'll do it, Kelly said, unwavering. As they stood together, the chamber door burst open. A guard stumbled in, bleeding. My king, Lord Valerius. He's made his move. He and his loyalists are storming the royal wing. The castle is breached. The sounds of battle, clash of steel, snarls of fighting wolves, erupted from the corridor. The battle was here, now, and it was for their lives. Chapter 18. The Queen's First Battle. The doors splintered, exploding inward. Assassins poured into the room, blades ready. Kaelin roared and let his wolf take over. The shift was instantaneous. Where the man stood, a massive black wolf now stood, larger and more powerful than she'd ever seen. He was no longer a broken beast. He was magnificent. He met the assassin's charge like a tidal wave. The battle was brutal, chaotic violence. But there were too many. They were trying to get past him to the pups. The pups, awakened by the clash, began to wail. Their cries cut straight into Kelly's heart. She was no longer a servant to be saved. She was a Luna. And this was her den. An assassin slipped past Kaelin's flank, his poisoned dagger raised, eyes fixed on the crying infants. Kelly moved without thinking. She grabbed a heavy chair and swung it with desperate strength. The wood crashed against the assassin's side, sending him stumbling. She gave Kaelin the moment he needed. He spun, his jaws closing around the attacker. For one brilliant moment, she'd fought with him, a partner in battle. As the fight raged, an assassin's blade sliced deep along Kaelin's flank. The king's wolf yelped but finished the last attacker before collapsing. Without hesitation, Kelly was at his side, pressing her hands to the bleeding wound. But the poison was too strong. Acting on instinct, she bit down on her own wrist and pressed the bleeding wound against his. Her blood, the sacred blood of a moon healer, sizzled as it met his tainted flesh. The silver light flared, neutralizing the poison and knitting the torn muscle. She knelt on the floor of their ruined chambers, healing her fallen king with her own life force. Chapter 19. Two souls, one fire. The great hall was filled with stunned survivors. They'd seen her heal him. They'd seen her fight for the pups. They'd seen a miracle. The full moon poured silver light through shattered windows. This was the moment. Kaelin addressed his people, voice raw but unwavering. He told them of the council's lies, of the true noble bloodline of the woman beside him. The laws of men have failed us. Tonight, we will not put our faith in the words of wolves, but in the will of the goddess herself. We will perform the blood oath here, now, and let the moon be our witness and our judge. He looked at Kelly, his eyes filled with absolute trust. A collective gasp went through the pack. The blood oath was a myth, a ritual so dangerous no one had attempted it in 500 years. Kaelin took the ceremonial dagger. He did not hesitate. He drew a sharp line across his own palm, dark blood welling instantly. Then, with reverence that made her heart ache, he took her hand. His touch was infinitely gentle as he made a matching cut on her palm. He pressed their bleeding hands together, flesh to flesh, blood to blood. As their wounds met, the moonlight in the room coalesced, focusing into a single intense beam that engulfed them both. Kelly felt his soul touch hers. The raw, untamed power of the Alpha King, his unwavering devotion, his deep love for his people. She opened her spirit to him. She felt the last gray remnants of the wound from the northern skirmish and poured her silver light into it, cleansing the shadows. In return, his strength flooded into her, a tidal wave of pure alpha power that didn't consume her, but completed her. It washed away the last whispers of unworthiness, filling all the hollow places with his unshakable belief in her. The weak spark that had connected them didn't just ignite. It erupted into a roaring, transcendent inferno. Their souls intertwined until they were no longer two separate beings, but two halves of a single, perfect whole. A wave of pure, divine energy radiated from their joined hands, a silent benediction that washed over every wolf in the hall. It was a feeling of profound peace, of absolute rightness, of sacred balance restored. In perfect unison, every wolf in the great hall, noble, guard, and servant alike, sank to one knee. Not for their king, but for their king and their queen. Chapter 20. Always My Queen. The divine energy slowly receded, leaving profound silence. Kelly looked out at the sea of bowed heads. The invisible nanny, the disgraced Omega, the traitor's whelp, all those broken versions of herself were gone, burned away in the fire of the blood oath. She was Luna, and she was home. Kaylin gently unclasped their hands. She looked down to see both palms completely healed, leaving only a thin, shimmering silver line, a permanent mark of their bonded souls. He turned to her, love shining in his golden eyes, so profound it was more brilliant than moonlight itself. Then he did something that shattered 1,000 years of tradition. The Alpha King, Kaylin the Unbroken, slowly, deliberately sank to one knee before her, before his mate, before his queen. He took her hand, not with possessive grip, but with gentle worship. "Kelly," he said, voice thick with emotion yet strong enough for every wolf to hear, "you faced down my enemies. You healed my wolf. You saved my soul." His gaze was an oath. "My life, my crown, my heart. They were always yours. From the moment I heard your song, I was yours." This was the new order. Not a king who ruled over his mate, but a king who knelt before her, their strengths intertwined, their power a perfect, unbreakable circle. A small commotion came from the side of the hall. A guard gently guided two small figures forward. Lyra and Leo toddled on unsteady legs across the stone floor. They bypassed the kneeling king and went straight to Kelly, their small hands clinging to her dress. They looked up at her with pure, uncomplicated adoration. This was the only judgment that had ever truly mattered. With a laugh that was half a sob, Kelly knelt down, mirroring her king, and scooped the pups into her arms. Their small, warm bodies fit against her as if they were pieces of her own soul. She looked from their trusting faces to her kneeling king, to her devoted pack. The hollow ache she'd carried since childhood was finally, completely gone. This was her family. This was her pack. She was home. Weeks later, the great hall was unrecognizable. The scars of battle had been replaced by garlands of white moonflowers. Silver banners bearing the new sigil, a black wolf and silver moon intertwined, hung from the rafters. Today was not a trial or a battle. It was a celebration, a coronation, a promise of a new beginning. Kelly stood at the back of the hall, feeling joyful, exhilarating nerves. She was not afraid of being seen anymore. She was ready. The music began, a soft melody of hope and renewal. She walked down the aisle, her steps steady and sure. The entire pack looked at her with genuine, heartfelt reverence and love. Lyra and Leo toddled ahead, scattering moonflower petals with joyous abandon. She reached the dais where Kaelin waited. The pure happiness that lit him from within chased away the last shadows. He was not just a king. He was a man deeply, truly, completely in love. A guard brought forward the Luna's crown on a velvet cushion. It was not heavy gold and jewels, but a delicate circlet of woven silver shaped like moonflower vines, a single perfect pearl resting in the center. Kaelin took the crown, holding it up for the pack to see. Before he placed it on her head, he spoke his final vow. "The world saw you as a servant," he said, voice ringing with passion. "They saw you as a nanny, a whisper in the walls, a shadow to be overlooked. They were blind." He looked into her eyes, his soul laid bare. "I see you, Kelly. From the very first moment I heard your voice, my soul recognized yours." He smiled. "You were never just the nanny. You were never a placeholder. In my heart, you were always my queen." With infinite tenderness, he placed the silver crown upon her head. It settled as if made for her, a cool, lightweight destiny. The pack erupted in joyous, unrestrained celebration.